I feel like diet culture sets you up to never be good enough.
Did you burn 500 calories on the treadmill today? No? Me either.
I mean, anybody can sit with us. We're just really not about diet culture.
But literally, happiness doesn't come from a low-calorie, high-intensity life. I actually do like carrots.
I do too. They're my favorite.
Welcome to the Fit Fueled Free podcast.
So basically, diets suck.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 71. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jenna.
And today we're talking about intuitive fasting. So most of you have probably seen a lot of really funny memes about how Gwyneth Paltrow is endorsing a book written by Dr. Will Cole called Intuitive Fasting. And as you can probably imagine, I completely lost my mind and went down a rabbit hole of reading the majority of the text. Don't worry, I only purchased the Kindle version so that I would contribute the least possible money to this ridiculousness, but I wanted to really see like what they were encouraging. And I threw together a ton of talking points so that me and Jenna can just have a conversation. I think most people can probably spot why this is problematic, but I also, while I was writing my scathing Amazon review, I read a lot of reviews where people thought this was wonderful, as they're going to, because it's endorsed by Gwyneth Paltrow. Yep. And this is the third book that Will Cole has written. Dr. Will Cole, has written. And so there's a following here. And I want to talk about why it's a problem.
Let's do it.
Okay. So obviously the first thing that is an issue here is that intuitive fasting is going to be an oxymoron, because when you intentionally set a time period that you are not allowed to eat, that is no longer going to be intuitive. I think we all intuitively fast at nighttime when we're sleeping, except for those of us who may struggle with eating like in our sleep or some other disorders there. But like, I think that's a relatively common thing we have, is that when we go to sleep, we are intuitively fasting.
Yep.
But that's like period, end of story. So Gwyneth has a foreword in this text, and the thing that really stood out to me that she said specifically is that when I eat what feels right to me, I feel my best. That kind of advice, though, is typically delivered with no roadmap for getting there. So I would like to say, first of all, there is a roadmap for getting there, and it is called the book Intuitive Eating. And there are also a plethora of other resources of dietitians who have expanded on those principles and encourage people to do that, just like Jenna and I talk about it, as well as intuitive movement and just completely moving away from diet culture. There are roadmaps, many, many, many roadmaps. The problem with these roadmaps for people like Gwyneth Paltrow is that they don't come with weight loss advice. Well, some of them do, but not the genuine ones. Intuitive eating is not a diet. And I wish it was as simple as that to say that, but there's just so many problems with this entire thing. I take major issue with someone with her privilege endorsing something like this, and not because I don't think that she's allowed to do what she wants, because we will always say that. We're not here to judge people. I find it harder to not have judgment when people of power with a lot of privilege use that to make money off of people who can suffer. And I don't know that those people aren't suffering, the ones that are doing it. I can't say that, but I feel protective, and not because the general public are idiots, but because we just know how this stuff works. And we've talked about people we've followed and trusted who let us down really dark pathways. And it's like, I just think with power comes responsibility. It's like that's that Spider-Man quote, right?
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah, I agree.
So is there anything that comes to your mind? Because you're gonna have to interrupt me because I'm still quite angry.
Well, I mean, my initial thought was like, fasting is intentional restriction. And restriction is restriction. It doesn't matter what you're restricting, whether it's time or food, it's still restriction, which is not intuitive. It's diet culture.
What?
I mean, light bulb, like that. I don't really, I've been reading stuff about it and I've just been like shocked that it's even being acceptable. Like it's even being accepted by some people as an acceptable form of eating that's being accepted as not diet, because I'm like flabbergasted because I'm like, it doesn't, unless you're sleeping. Landon was like, we were talking about it. He was like, okay, so is this a book about sleep? Because like, unless you're like, that's the only time that you're, intuitively fasting for most people is when you're sleeping.
I love when you share Landon's little quips. Did you know that according to Dr. Will Cole, it is restrictive to eat 3 meals and snacks per day? That is actually restrictive.
How?
So basically saying that there was a lot of reference around people eating too many granola bars. And that we are slaves to these food rules that we've been taught forever, and it's not actually satisfying, blah, blah, blah. So my take on that was, how do I negate this pretty reasonable advice to fuel your body throughout the day? If I want to sell my book, I'm going to have to make people think that that is the evil. And that is how I interpreted it. Like, some people may only eat 3 meals per day, but the majority of people I've ever met and encountered and interact with need to eat more often than that. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but he's essentially demonizing using the way our metabolism works with carbohydrates, saying that's a very limiting energy source, which it is, which is why we have to keep eating, because that's how our bodies work. But instead, he would prefer that we tap into using our fat and using ketones because it's more quote unquote sustainable.
So it's like a hybrid of keto.
Kind of. So this was a quote really early on. This is like probably the biggest quote I'll read, but I felt this was really important to like, what the heck are we reading? All right. Intuitive fasting is different from other types of fasting in that it's not designed to be difficult or restrictive. It's not about starvation. It's about self-respect. It's about loving your body enough to perform acts of radiant wellness. Fasting has been used for centuries as a way to strengthen the human body and optimize overall health. Intuitive fasting is about reconnecting us with the way our ancestors did things because they were really onto something. Fasting may seem strange at first, but eating mindlessly and never being fully satisfied throughout the day is just as strange, if not stranger.
Our ancestors didn't have everyday jobs like we do. They didn't have cars. They didn't have houses. They had to hunt for food. They had to like sometimes maybe flee for their lives from like wild animals. So that's like, we're so far removed from that world. So that is so out of context, I feel like, because nothing is the same about when our ancestors were on this earth. So how can we met like the eating style? I just think that's absurd.
I agree. And I do not wish to be a caveman.
Right.
I like having civilization and having like, I mean, not everyone has these things to access, but I enjoy it. I enjoy that part of my life. And I just find this I agree, it's nonsensical. I don't know what this obsession with our ancestors is, but eating mindlessly throughout the day and never being fully satisfied, I can always argue that that's because we feel like we're not supposed to be eating, which this is reinforcing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And sure, we do a lot of mindless eating, but why is it suddenly going to get better because we eat less often? We're suddenly going to have more time to eat. Like, that's a whole nother issue.
And doesn't this book have like exact recommendations in terms of like when to eat and what to eat? And that in and of itself is everything that intuition is not, by
Sure
telling
does.
you when and what to eat.
Because you know what intuitive eating does not do? As Jen and I just went through the entire 10 principles, it does not tell you exactly what to eat and when.
Yep.
Because no expert can tell you exactly what that should look like. That's the whole freaking point. Okay.
Yep.
I'm trying not to be overly sarcastic. I can't help myself. So he says that we're going to throw out the archaic food rules and make our own rules instead. But that is interesting because I thought we were trying to follow the archaic example. So please stop contradicting yourself if you're going to write a book that you want me to respect. There's just a lot of talk around why this isn't punitive or full of do this or else statements, that it's simple, actionable, effective, and for everyone. I believe that you could get sued for a statement like that. They do have the disclaimer typical in the front of the book, but like, no, this is not for everyone.
And
Um,
effective in terms of what? Weight
yeah,
loss?
the
That's
hell
a
does that
diet.
mean? I would like to know. And simple, I don't think any diets are simple because they don't work. Okay, actionable, yeah, sure, I'll give him that. So the thing that really blew my mind that I wasn't fully expecting to happen was the way that they co-opted. They reference diet culture in this book, that this is going against diet culture because that's trending now.
Yep.
Just like people who put intuitive eating under weight loss categories to advertise to people that is a problem. They are not one and the same. They do not go together. So that is like right there. I guess for anyone that wonders why like new programs that come out are not like I don't ever recommend following this kind of stuff ever because I would never recommend a diet, but like even outside of that, because right there they're using the most current trendy terminology within the first 15 pages of the book to try and hook people, but they're contradicting themselves because they can't not contradict themselves. That is literally going to be impossible when you're using terminology which is now trending about healing your relationship with food. You can't do that on a diet. So that is so easy. Like so many red flags pop up right away. But I bet you that this book is going to be extremely popular for people who have been interested in intuitive eating in the sense of wondering how it can help them lose weight because
Yep.
there's so much of that that's been skewed and inappropriately used all over the place. And intermittent fasting is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So I could see why this appeals to people, but it just popping off with red flags left and right from the get-go. And also, this program includes recipes, meal plans, and daily eating schedules, so you'll never be left guessing what you should eat or when.
Well,
I'm
then
sorry,
that's
did you not just say, like, a couple pages ago that it's not restrictive and it's not full of do this or else statements?
being told what to do and when to eat and how much to eat is not intuitive.
And that is also a do this or else statement.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we get into how intermittent fasting is when you eat, not how much you eat. And it's very important not to be counting calories or chronically restricting. So I'm just going to jump to pretty far ahead here in the text because I knew this was going to happen, but I had to see it for myself. The calorie ranges for this are 1,200 to 1,600 calories a day for the 4 weeks. The highest recipes I saw were 17 or 1,800, and there was less than 5 of those.
Mm.
So,
Another contradiction.
a lot of people don't think that that's calorie restriction,
Yeah.
but that is completely horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that many, many times, like why that's a problem. So, yikes, big freaking yikes. The fact that this is being broadcasted for everyone, and I would hope that toddlers aren't using this. So those 1,200 calorie days, that is literally, you cannot write, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but like if you write a book that's saying it's not about calorie restriction, it's about when you eat, but yet you have such low calories, like I would want you figure out a way to get someone's like, I would want to see nothing less than 1,800 calories.
Mm-hmm.
So where this gets even trickier, which is where you're probably going to get really mad, is that regularly, instead of eating when you feel like you're going to break your fast, it's recommended that you go exercise.
Oh my gosh.
So not only are we starving people and telling them to just toughen up, which sounds a hell of a lot like a diet to me, we're then telling them to go move their body
Mm-hmm. Burn
to stave
calories.
off the hunger and to distract themselves. So that part was like having all those details together of like I read the majority of this and having that come together. That is like, and the fact that this book was released during National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, which I think is what set a lot of the anti-diet community off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is literally promoting disordered eating.
Yep.
And if you are genetically predisposed to an eating disorder, disordered eating is often a way to get there. So it's literally mind-blowing. It's disgusting.
Our ancestors also didn't work out. So to like bring it all back to like ancestry and saying like we should be living like they did, like maybe they fasted because they didn't have like
No,
access to food,
they were starving.
and they I'm sure as hell didn't go and bust out a 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour workout to further perpetuate their hunger.
No, certainly they did not do that.
The
That
whole
makes literally no sense.
thing just
So after we're talking about how this isn't diet culture, this isn't blah, 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 by page 17, we are listing the practical side effects of intermittent fasting. Number 1 being healthy weight loss. And I love how that is also being used. That's another lovely thing that gets thrown around lately is quote unquote healthy weight loss, because heaven forbid you followed a diet and lost weight and it was disordered, and then that was associated with something that someone was trying to promote. So we'll call this healthy weight loss. So that makes no sense why suddenly this has been brought into the conversation, except for obviously we knew this was diet culture, this is the wellness diet, this is all that stuff, except for now people are getting smarter and using healing relationship with food to get people to do diets, which is so freaking toxic. And I don't know how people are supposed to find that space because we're having these things thrown at you. And Gwyneth has the whole Goop empire. So, like, for her to endorse something like this, it's just like, has she never, like, I wonder, like, has she ever read intuitive eating? Has Dr. Will Cole ever read intuitive eating? Like, what was the basis of being able to, like, say these things? Because it just comes across so just so awfully. Uh,
I don't see how they could have read it.
and that's the whole problem with diet culture, is this is to make money,
Mhm.
which is, like, even parts of intuitive eating, I found hard to digest because I was like, "This is awfully, like," it's all
Mhm.
opinion, so even
Yeah.
though I think that's the best possible framework, I love that other dietitians and, like, we've talked about it and, like, put our own spin on things because I don't think there's one right way, and they even talk about that in the book, so to say that and then give exactly a 4-week plan, it's nauseating. I don't know what the obsession with granola bars is, because I feel like what people really are eating now is, like, sugar-free keto bars, so
Mm.
that's just really outdated. Um, there was a reference to a study done on patients who had recently undergone bariatric surgery showing that higher meal frequency was related to diminished weight loss. And I just wanted to say that somebody who just had bariatric surgery would die if they tried to do this intermittent fasting plan and get enough nourishment in, because they can only consume, right after that surgery, several ounces of food, and their protein needs are so high that you do have to eat small frequent meals in order to sustain themselves. Do you wanna know why they gain the weight back? Is because just because you change someone's stomach size, that does not change their biology or the fact that bodies are not, we can't shrink bodies. We are not in charge of
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
And to use that, it's just so, like, ugh, I don't know how many people will listen to our podcast that aren't already, like, working towards healing relationship with food, but just even, like, that one line, if I read an entire text and then I saw something like that being used that literally makes no sense, like, done. Throw the book
Mhm.
in the garbage because this
Mhm.
guy is not credible. But this is gonna be the next big thing, and it's
Yep.
gonna be so popular.
Yep.
Ugh, okay. So then we get to talking about Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, and how he recommended people abstain from eating and drinking for periods of time to cure illness. And I just would like to remind you that getting dehydrated is not a way to get better. So that's also really dumb. Then we talk about how after 8 to 10 hours without food, your body enters ketosis. Um, so he says that because people consume 3 meals a day with snacks in between, fasting never occurs. I don't eat for 8 to 10 hours a day because I sleep 9 hours a night. I know not everyone does, but we do recommend 9 hours of sleep.
Mhm.
That is a privilege to be able to get that much sleep, I know, and we're not talking about how that is a baseline recommendation for health. So I feel like some of this is just, like, Landon's point, is this a book about sleep?
Sleep.
Because like, you're telling me that can't happen, but most people, like, this book, it sounds like was written for people who are binging
Yeah.
because they're restricting during the day and
Mhm.
quote unquote overeating, which we know this is not the way to fix that. I think that's who this book was written for, which is so fat phobic and diet culture centric.
Yeah.
It's just not making any sense.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Eating 3 energy-rich meals plus snacks every day with no physical exertion required is unusual viewed in the light of evolution. So I looked into that article that was referenced,
Mhm.
and my comment on here in all caps was, "Hello, do you know about basal metabolic rate?" And I could only, on this article that was quoted, I could only find one author. And typically when things are, like, legit, there's more than one person that's
Yeah.
involved,
Mhm.
and we know that peer-reviewed research and, like, meta-analyses and things being studied more than one time are needed to actually use it, so it sounds like there's some trash, science, pseudo-science, as I like to call it, being used here. Um he also refers to our cells that behave like mini sugar addicts, making it impossible for us to connect to our intuitive patterns, because if we're craving sugar so much to rely on it for fuel, we're hungry and craving sweet and carby foods all the time, no matter how much we eat. And that, I would like to say, is a complete myth. I'm assuming you can also speak to that, Jenna, because when you do work on healing your relationship with food, you don't just crave sweets and carbs. That happens from restriction.
Yep. So if you're someone who's healed and you're eating intuitively, you're no longer craving those things all the time because they're freely available whenever you want. The only reason, like you said, that you would be craving that is because you're not allowing yourself to have it.
And if we think about the amount of carbohydrates we need for our metabolism to be working effectively and to get enough energy and nutrients and fiber, we should be needing more carbs than all these other foods. But I understand this person is saying that we shouldn't be doing that. So, in fact, the 4-week flexible fasting plan is accompanied by a fasting enhancing high-fat, low-carb, clean nutrition plan that helps you tackle other common health something or other. That was the quote that I pulled. Okay. Then something else that is I literally can't with this is his referencing of metabolic syndrome and stating that the symptoms are so subtle that a doctor can't spot them. So I know that you have worked more with integrative medicine, and I don't laugh at it. I'm not saying there's no basis to it, but if you're going to write an entire book giving vague descriptions, basically telling people to make something up within themselves so that you can follow this plan to get better because a doctor won't be able to spot it, that is a really slippery slope to be going into a disordered eating path and not coming back.
Yep.
So, there's then this 25 question questionnaire about ways to find out if you're metabolically flexible or inflexible. And the questions are absolutely crazy. For example, you find yourself snacking a lot and always have an emergency snack on hand. Your brain doesn't work efficiently if you haven't eaten recently and you can't think when you're hungry. You lean on caffeine and sugar for energy more than you should. And that's tough because it's like, maybe I lean on caffeine more, but I don't lean on sugar more because I eat carbohydrates. So, that makes it impossible. You plan your workouts around your meals. And if you answer yes to them, you're being penalized. So he's basically saying you should be able to just at any time do anything if you're fasting because it won't matter.
That doesn't make any sense.
You experience anxiety if you have to skip a meal or delay a meal. Well, it's not good to not, I'm not saying you should have anxiety, but to not have food available, that should be upsetting because you need to eat. So it's just I don't know how we're making this quantitative to measure metabolic inflexibility, but this honestly just seems like a list of questions that go along with what this author wants people to do. So if you answer them, even I'm metabolically inflexible according to this, but I have no evidence to support that outside of it because I'm not trying to fight my body. So yeah, it's just it's so frustrating. All right, how are we doing? Am I can I keep
It's
going?
great. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like I'm just over here smirking because I feel like you're really biting your tongue in what you really want to say. And I just know, I know you, and I'm like, if we could get the unfiltered, unedited version, that would be a show.
Yeah, that would be something. So then we talk about leptin and ghrelin. Then we talk about how Let me just read this because I wanted to talk about why this is garbage. One of leptin's main jobs is to tell our brains to use our body's fat stores for energy, which is key to metabolic flexibility. Leptin resistance occurs when the hypothalamic cells in the brain stop recognizing leptin's signal. As a result, the brain doesn't perceive that enough food has come in, and it reads that as starvation. If leptin resistance happens to you, your brain will turn on all the signals it can make up for falsely perceived food deficit. Everything you eat goes straight into fat storage without being used for energy, making the problem even worse. That is not possible. So we know that when you don't eat enough and your body wants to protect you, like I can see where that's coming together, but to say that that everything you eat goes straight into fat storage,
Yeah.
that's hyperbole, and you shouldn't combine that in with scientific evidence.
Yeah.
That is not possible. So just stop. And it sounds so bad. It sounds so scary. And like,
Yeah, it's fear mongering.
I would want to listen to this if I were
Yep.
diet culture ridden Danielle, like before all this stuff, like I 100% would have been doing this, just like I jumped on other things that you
Yeah.
were supposed to be doing because
Yep.
it sounds
Yeah.
good until
Yeah,
you
it sounds
actually like
promising. Uh-huh.
break it down. Um So then we hear that you can eat all the right foods and fast every night for 16 hours, but if you're under extreme stress, your body isn't going to heal and become more metabolically flexible. You have to show yourself love, make yourself a priority, and take time to unwind. The good news is you don't have to do it alone. In this book, I will help you break the cycle. So now we're giving an excuse for if your BS diet doesn't work. Now we're going to blame it on stress. And you know why I know that? Because I used to do that for a living when I couldn't help people lose their tummy. You know what I told them? They don't sleep enough and they're too stressed. There is something to that, but that's like I should have cared about that before I started talking to them about their diet because if I had seen that that would have worked, I never would have even had that conversation. So now we have a cop out for why this diet isn't working, blaming your body. And I just want to talk about the people that, like, yes, everyone needs to focus on self care, but we talk about how some people do not have that ability
Right.
to just. And if you're focusing on this just to lose weight, which now it's very clear that's all this book is about, because you wouldn't care if your metabolism was not flexible unless you were trying to get skinnier. Because no one cares about metabolism at all unless they're talking about their weight. Let's be real. So now he's gonna help cure everyone, which is just another like striking way to say, hey, I have a lot of privilege and I think I can save you. It honestly, it was dripping with narcissism.
Yeah.
Just a lot of comments like that. It's like, okay. Let's not talk about social economic disparities. Let's not talk about weight stigma. Let's not talk about people's trauma histories. Let's not talk about any of that. You just need to make yourself a priority and unwind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't even think therapy was talked about in here, but I could be wrong on that, but I don't remember that being a thing. Just talking about like meditation and great things that are really great, sure, but they are not the end all be
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, okay. So oh yeah, he just went on to talk about how because we snack all day long, it's been a long time since any of us have been in ketosis, so we're not giving our body that opportunity to do that rest and healing. But like again, he said that after 8 to 10 hours of not eating, we go into it, and that's probably very normal.
Yeah.
Like a high percentage of people, I am willing to bet. Okay. So then we're talking about measuring your ketone bodies with urine strips and but then ketone testing is not required. So it's like So you're giving me this option of how to determine whether or not I'm doing this the right way, but it's okay if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I find that kind of stuff very difficult because it's like, let's not even bring it up in the first place. If you don't need to do it, you don't need to
Then
do
why are
it.
you going to say it? Yeah.
It's not important. And then we hear about how sugar is the biggest threat to our health. And again, I will say that socioeconomic disparities are, and privilege, and this BS is more threatening to our health as well as weight stigma than sugar. That's, oh my gosh, I can't. I just can't. Now we have to check nutrition labels of every food you buy and familiarize yourself with the different names sugar can be disguised under. So this isn't gonna, you have so much time to just go and rest and relax so that your metabolism becomes more
Right.
flexible because you're not busy doing anything. Oh, and then this, don't take this personally, but your brain is your fattest body part. It's okay. Mine is too. Fat-phobia. Okay. Oh my God. I could scream. I could scream. And I just want to remind everyone, carbohydrates are not addicting. Sugar is not the worst thing for your health. And fasting can set you up to binge, which is the exact problem that this man is complaining about in the first place. So here we're to the part where drinking water can reduce your hunger because you got to give people these practical tips if you're going to ask them to starve themselves. Ooh, now we get metaphysical meals. Do you know what a metaphysical meal is, Jenna?
I don't know.
It's how you nourish yourself with rituals without eating food. Yeah, that was a new one for me. I did not, I was unaware that I could nourish my body
Nutritionally
with a
without
metaphysical
food.
meal.
So what is it like? Did he give an example?
Yeah, let me pull this.
He's saying that you can nutritionally nourish your body without food.
It's more like,
that's enough to discredit him right there and put him.
It's more like, hang on. How did we segue into this? So you've woken up every morning for years thinking you need to have breakfast, but now you're taking your schedule and flipping it on its head, so it's normal to feel lost. So if you need a new routine, eating breakfast is less about the food than you think. So fill that gap with something mindful, like walking, doing something creative, journaling, meditation, prayer, which are all wonderful things. But then we're calling these metaphysical meals, so you can still nourish yourself even without food. And I agree. Sure, you can nourish yourself, but can we use a synonym? Because nourishment is really, the first thing that comes to mind is nutrition.
Food,
Nourish, nutrition, very similar.
Yep.
So then we reference how cultures across the globe fast, and now we can't eat in front of the TV or use social media, blah, blah, blah. So if you're not sure where to start, then you get some metaphysical meal journal prompts. This shit is literally these are behaviors. When I'm working with my eating disorder patients, we talk about eliminating eating disorder behaviors. This is a behavior. Now, I'm not knocking someone that is for religious purposes doing a fast and is trying to cope, because I'm never going to judge someone for that. But to just blanketly say, do this instead of eating breakfast, that is wildly disordered. So yeah. Oh, and here's a prompt for this. It's a time to reflect on your relationship with food while you're starving yourself. Good time for that. Write down what food peace means to you. Okay. It's almost psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
Swear, stop it. So basically, once we eat when we're only truly hungry, eat until we're only full, never feel like we're restricting or punishing ourselves, then we've found food peace. And apparently this is going to lead you to that. So can you stop? I'm busy. I'm really busy. Then we talk about like what happens if you were to fall off the wagon. And then, one broken fast will spiral to a lifetime of poor food and lifestyle choices, which, of course, every diet has to warn you why this will not happen to you. Cue Weight Watchers, that's been around with new programs every year for what feels like a century. When you're metabolically inflexible, this is not unnecessarily untrue. So apparently the only reason that diets fail is because you're metabolically inflexible, but only this diet won't fail because this is the only thing that is a diet but isn't a diet. So apparently if you try to eat healthy while being metabolically inflexible, it's like trying to keep a dam from breaking, trying to keep it together while cracks form and water escapes over the tops and sides. It feels arduous and punitive, and you have to be perfect or you will fall apart. And unfortunately, the result is a lifetime of craving, shame, denying yourself, feeling perpetually dissatisfied and afraid of what will happen if you slip up. And I just want to say that's what happens when you're on a diet.
Yep.
That does not have anything to do with metabolic inflexibility. That's a diet.
Yep. And that's basically, again, going against what he said about there's no shoulds or us telling you what you have to do, because right here he's saying if you don't do this and become metabolically flexible, then you're going to have a lifetime of cravings, shame, and denying yourself if you don't do what I tell you.
And the only way to become metabolically flexible is to not starve yourself, which is why I just don't understand how this will not work if working means you're going to lose weight and keep it off.
Right.
Or have food peace or reduce your stress. And then it gives another example of what food peace is and how this is intuitive eating and the heart of intuitive fasting. And it's really a bunch of garbage. So in addition to the calorie counts that I told you about, these meals, I wanted to do a count on what the grocery bill would be like for this. But
I'm sure it's absurd.
When I did the Blogilates clean eating program, the first time, I spent $100 on groceries for myself for a week. I was in college. I can't afford $400 of groceries. That didn't include money I spent on anything else. That was my grocery bill for one person. And I'm sure a lot of people can afford that, but that's crazy, because then if you have more than one person in your house, that's going to double. There's some things you can use, but the core of the things you have to eat, you're going to have to buy more of. That's not feasible. This is not for everyone. This is for people who want to go on a diet and pretend they're not. Yep. And I don't think it's even because the individual person, well, sometimes it is wanting to pretend, but it's people trying to make money off of you. And you know what's the best part about this, of you and I having this podcast, even though it would be really lovely if we were famous and had sponsors, but you and I don't make money from this. We actually spend money on this project. So that is the most unbiased shit you can ever get. It's people who are technically going in the red making a project because we believe in it.
Yeah.
Telling you that these people are trying to just make money from you. And that is it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for Dr. Will Cole, but after reading this text, I was not convinced that he actually thinks he's helping people. I think he thinks he knows how to rip people off with now the third book. Why do you need a third one?
You're right. Yeah.
Curious, because the Ketotarian, I believe. What are his other? So what the hell is this? Also, I think Ketotarian is an oxymoron, but books. The inflammation spectrum.
Mm.
That's the other one.
Okay.
And there was talk about that in here as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say what I always
that.
say. We know that inflammation can be harmful, and also it's necessary, and you can't actively eliminate all elimination in your diet. And there are a lot of other things that are going to cause elimination that we are never going to resolve if we're this obsessed about every morsel of food that goes in our mouths.
Yep. And I mean, use your freedom, do what you want. Like, we're not telling you what to do, but like, don't get it twisted. Like, this is not intuitive. Nothing about this is intuitive. Like, you're hijacking the term. And I didn't really think that there's a way to hijack intuitive eating and twist it into a diet, but here we are. And I think it's wrapped up in a really pretty bow, and it's going to be really harmful for people who are, like you were saying, kind of on the cusp of like being curious about intuitive eating, but like not taking that dive because they like still have weight loss as the main goal. And this is going to feel like a happy medium to get the best of both worlds. And I think that's incredibly harmful.
And honestly, if the weight loss part hadn't come up, I would have been way less harsh on this text. Even though I find it harmful to use intuitive with fasting, like 100%, I wouldn't have gone off the deep end. But the fact that it was like this promise for just wellness, but it was like wink, wink, I'm fat-phobic, and I need you to lose the weight so that I can get credibility for this program. And when I find that it's not working for people because it is impacting their diet, I will write my fourth text.
Yep.
And move on with my life. So
it's infuriating.
I think I'm gassed. I think I said it all. Yeah, I was very angry reading this, as I get. And I hope that this is helpful, because even myself, like Jen and I talk about this a lot, how even though we have done a lot of work, sometimes we still get like caught up in stuff because it sounds really good and it like appeals to us in some way. And I think this is going to be very appealing, and that's scary.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts?
No. I mean, I think we could talk forever about this
Probably.
and how frustrating and contradictory it is. I just think, nothing about fasting is intuitive, and it's restriction, and restriction is restriction. And it's like the hub of intuitive eating is satisfaction, and this is not that.
Eat whatever you want, as long as it's within this time frame of the day, and as long as it doesn't go over 1,800 calories.
Yeah. Exactly.
Why are the calorie counts even on there?
Right.
Like, what kind of subliminal messaging is that sending? Oh, and the other thing I did forget to say this is he talks about macros, how to count macros in here too. That was referenced. So I personally would love, like, I wish that I had some kind of clout in the world, because I would love more than anything to just go on a head-to-head debate with these people, because
I would pay money to see that.
I wish. I want to know what they think. Like, I want to know how they even like could go to sleep without laughing at themselves at night for writing this. Like, I just can't see it, other than the money hungry part, because I've watched people in action with that, and like I get that, but like any other part, like I just don't understand how you don't see how this is contradictory. And like, as someone who enjoys writing myself, like if I'm concerned that there's a contraindication, I ask.
Yeah.
And I'm not even like, I don't have no more than 600 followers, and I still take the time to make sure that things that I put out as a professional and just as a human make sense. Yeah. Okay, so moral of the story: sleep at night, don't eat while you're sleeping, and that is intuitive fasting.
Yep, sums it up right there.
You can save yourself the $11 to $25 and $1,000 grocery bill, and just go to sleep at night.
Yep.
Okay. So thanks for listening to my rant. At least once a year, I have to lose my mind and yell about things that make me really mad. Because I hate diet culture with a burning passion. Yeah, so follow us on Instagram if you don't already, at FitFueledFree. Our personal pages are at Dietitian Dani Cass and at JenAppFit. If you have not checked out Jenna's app, it is Level Up Fit, and I'll let you do your little plug there.
Yes. It's a monthly subscription workout app. We have 5 to 6 new workouts a week, daily fit mind affirmations. There's a lot of good content, form tips, demo videos. You can see all of this on my Instagram. I talk about it a lot, but all new users right now get 50% off your first month. So if you go to my website, jenappfit.com, you can get 50% off your first month using code LEVELUP50. And again, this is all detailed on my Instagram page. So if you have any questions, go there and check it out, and then shoot me a message if there's anything you need clarification on.
Perf. We want to hear from you, especially if you like this kind of ranty content where we debunk myths. We do want to know if that's helpful, because that's really easy to do and fun for us. So we would, like to know if you like it. And share the podcast, ratings, reviews. We're on YouTube, all the good things. Thank you guys so much for listening. And we can't wait to talk to you next week.
All right, bye, guys.